As expected, Houmous Useless won the rigged SNP leadership election, with maths supply teacher Wee Katy Forbes coming a close second, and Hackett Karen Gillan a distant third. Wee Katy, I don't know about you, but I thought she looked rather pleased to have lost when the result was announced. But Hackett Karen Gillan's face, fuck me, that would have stopped the traffic and curdled the milk. But did the Stalinist Nazi Party really elect the wrong racist as their new leader?
Right, should we get started?
Yes!
Right, I'm ready when you are.
Here we go then. Hold tight, everyone.
Oh, for God's sake!
Piss off!
Why am I surrounded by idiots?
Hello Grumpies. Greetings from the Shadowband Dimension. As you should know by now, the Grumpy Old Fan is primarily a Doctor Who channel, as the clusterfuck it is today is the thing that really pisses us off. But lots of other things make us grumpy too, which is why we boldly go where no fan has gone before, and do politics from time to time. Now when it comes to politics, nobody makes us more grumpy than the SNP. Now before we get going, I'd like to point you in the direction of some channels you might want to consider checking out if the SNP make you grumpy too, such as The Majority, Silver Fox Hot Takes, Mercurius, and That Preston Journalist. All well worth a sub. Channel links in the description, with a special shout out to Mark Felton for his video on the disturbing but factual history of the SNP. So let's just go over what we know so far. First, Alexei Salmonelevich led his 10,000 men up to the top of the hill in 2014 and then marched them back down again when they lost Indy Ref 1, the one and only one they're ever going to get. His protege, Nicola McStarling, takes over, throws him under the sexual assault allegations bus, which leaves court without him on board if you remember, and then proceeds to whinge till the cows come home about Brexit, because the plan was for Brussels to pick up the tab instead of Westminster if 2014 had gone as planned. After the longest self-referencing and self-pitying resignation speech in history, she resigned after shooting herself in the foot over women with a penis. The origins of this act of political self-immolation can be traced back to her hubris in forming a misguided alliance with the eco-wankers in the Jock Green Party, who seem to care more about trannies than turbines these days, rather than ruling as a minority administration. So McStarling stands down and her husband, Uncle Fester, is in charge of the election of her successor. The SNP employed a Southampton-based company, which is a bit weird given they hate the bastard English, to tally the votes, and they were told the SNP had 78,000 members. Remember that number. The two lassies in the contest, both of whom were born with vaginas, and neither of whom believe in women with a penis, smelt a McRat, and sent an open letter to Uncle Fester wanting to know how many members were eligible to vote. Now the SNP Politburo wanted to hold the contest behind closed doors, if you remember, and weren't going to release the membership figures until after the election was over, mainly because it turned out they only really had 72,000 members, but they had told the Southampton mob it was 78,000, which meant that Houmous Useless no longer had 6,000 votes already in the bag before the contest had even started. The voting was done by post and electronically, and as we all know from recent elections in America, neither of those are open to fraud and manipulation. The result in the end was 52% Houmous, 48% Wee Katy, pretty close to the 55-45 percentage result of the independence referendum of 2014. And next year, 2024, if we're all still here, will be the 10th anniversary of the SNP's greatest failure. That came round quick, didn't it? So Houmous wins the rigged result, the Politburo get the candidate they wanted, and McStarling continues to pull the strings behind the scenes. She's already got a TV poll tax funded podcast, but stand by for the serialisation of her upcoming revisionist memoirs in that racist rag The National, and the 3-part documentary series from her sympathetic SNP supporters at BBC Jockland. They'll probably draw the line at a cameo in Scotland's EastEnders River City, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. If she starts driving up to Dumbarton when she's passed a test, then we'll know for sure. But what about Wee Katy? Well, she did herself no favours at the start of the contest by alienating the atheists, and didn't manage to pull off her intended smackdown of Houmous in that clip from the debate. You know the one, when Houmous was in charge, ScotRail was ScotFail, the NHS was as up-to-date as VHS, that one. The audio of that clip should be played 24 hours a day on a loop, outside the Holyrood fishboat. The jock version of that tiresome twat in the top hat, who's always shouting about Brexit outside Westminster. As expected, Houmous offered her a demotion to rural affairs instead of finance, which he gave to one of his mates instead. Despite being the MSP for the arse end of sheep-shagging country, she told Humza to stick it up his jumper and buggered off back to the backbenches and the obscurity she came from. Some people think she's the king over the water, ready to come back and pick up the pieces when it all turns to shite, as it inevitably will. But Munter and Rugmuncher Mari Black has already let it be known that she, her wife and the rest of the alphabet people will leave the SNP if she ever becomes leader. So it's not going to happen. I confidently predict she'll stand down at the next Holyrood election, cash in on her time as finance secretary and go work for a bank or a hedge fund. The wheels are already coming off the SNP clown car, with the shouty mob at First Minister's questions carrying on where they left off when McStarlin was at the lectern. And the Politburo wanted to delay Hummus's first FMQs, if you remember. Can't think why. 6 out of 9 of his cabinet have vaginas, and are in his cabinet because they have vaginas, which is a smart move if you're a misogynist Muslim who takes his marching orders from his local mosque. Then there's the possible upcoming by-election resulting from the possible upcoming suspension of COVID spreader and former SNP MP Maggie Ferrier in Rutherglen, which the Labour Party will be desperate to win, if it happens. For all some people might be disappointed that she didn't win, don't forget that seemingly nice Wee Katy lassie is still a member of the SNP, historically a bunch of Nazi sympathisers and modern-day neo-communists, promoting a progressive politics that is just a nationalist front for totalitarianism by the back door. Wee Katy may be a pragmatic Christian who still goes to church, but don't forget she hates the bastard English too, which is why she's in the SNP. Nobody joins the Labour Party after a reasoned debate over the merits of socialism versus capitalism. No, they join after being told what evil bastards the Tories really are. Same with the SNP. Nobody joins after a conversational back and forth about devolution and local self-determination over remote centralisation. No, they join after being told what evil bastards the English really are and how everything wrong with Scotland is England's fault. Which ignores the fact that Scotland and Scots have done quite well out of both Union and Empire over the centuries, and had Scotland been independent in 2008 when the banking crisis hit, it would have been bankrupt and needed bailing out by the IMF. Houmous Useless coming out on top in an obvious stitch-up is the best possible outcome for us Brits. We can only hope the Labour Party gets its shit together sooner rather than later. The SNP civil war is in full swing, and it will only get worse when they inevitably lose a Holyrood election as the problems pile up, and there's only themselves to blame since they're the ones who've been in power for the past 20 years. Houmous Useless is the racist who stood up in the Jock Parliament and complained that there were too many white people in top positions, ignoring the fact that the population of Jockland is 98% fucking white. But it's always a good idea to promote people based on the colour of their skin rather than their ability, which of course played no part in him getting to the top. As well as being a racist, he's also the man who attempted to make private conversations a hate crime if someone overheard and objected to what you said. Yes, Houmous wants you to grass on your friends and neighbours. Now, where have we seen that before? Somewhere starting with an R. Wee Katy failed, on the surface, because she didn't convince enough of Hackett Karen Gillan supporters to make her their second choice in the ballot. The truth is, she wasn't an atheist, and wasn't ideologically pure enough for the SNP brown shirts, or at least the ones whose votes were real. Nearly half the party didn't vote for Useless, and around a third didn't even bother to vote for any of them. Get ready for the fallout from the SNP infighting between the ideologues and the pragmatists, because without a pathway to separatism, they have no reason for existing. The crisis in the SNP will only grow as they struggle to come to terms with being losers who can't win. Wee Katy the Christian is probably better off out of it. She's probably heard a sermon or two in the kirk about the love of money being the root of all evil, so it's a pity her pet political demons have deluded her into thinking that the bastard English are the root of all Scotland's evils. That's the only reason anyone would willingly sign up to join the Tartan Taliban. Next up, it's the kangaroo court trying to stitch up Boris, and the American Uniparty's long-awaited third attempt to take down the Donald. And never mind the state of the economy, which these same politicians fucked thanks to their plandemic lockdown, which is something you should never let them forget, and you should never forgive. Until the next time, resist the Marxist, don't be a sheep, and stay grumpy.